been thinking a lot and what to talk about, because some of the items around the internet governance, at least in Bulgaria, have been in the work for the last, I would say, 12 years or so, maybe even 13. But for those of you who, and there are except for like half a dozen Bulgarians, everyone here is from abroad. So for all the people that are not familiar with the development of the internet, I'm not going to go into the history, like when it started, how it started. I'll just mark some of the items which I think are key for the Bulgarian development, and I'll tell you why the legal framework that we have today in Bulgaria is actually helping the internet to develop. So the first major event that took place in Bulgaria was in '99, when the government, back then there was no Ministry for Communications, it was a Committee for Post and Telecommunications. And the committee issued an ordinance late in December '98 saying that the internet service providers should be licensed. So we initially thought that this is an error and they will fix it soon. They refused to do so, so in January we filed a case. The Internet Society of Bulgaria filed a case against the government about this ordinance. Cut the long story short, it took us 10 months and about 300 publications in all the media in Bulgaria. And we managed to reach an out-of-court agreement with the Prime Minister. Many years later, I met the head of the Supreme Court where the case was taking place. And we talked something about computers. He was having some questions, and I said, you know, I'm sorry, maybe we caused you some problems back in '99. He said, oh, no, it was a very easy case. The Prime Minister called me and asked me if he's going to win. And I told him, no, you're losing. And he called you and reached an out-of-court agreement. So I was thinking I couldn't imagine the President of the United States calling the Supreme Court judge and asking him, are we going to win the healthcare case, for example, which just took place in the US. Like, this would be, I mean, just the phone call would be enough for an impeachment of the President. But then I talked to someone, a Supreme Court judge actually here, and he said, no, you're mistaken. He did not influence the case, he just asked. So this is to give you some cross-cultural essence of how we had to, what we had to deal with. However, this case actually turned out to be the break point in the relations between the civil society and the government. Because ever since, no matter who is in charge of the government, whether it's the center party, left, right, they've always asked the Internet Society about changes related to Internet governance, meaning Internet names and numbers. And in a way, thanks to this case, the current, which is still the first and the only CCTLD registered .bg, is enjoying a really nice life, because under the Bulgarian telecommunications law, the state can regulate the numbers, names, and addresses, except for internet names and internet addresses. It can still regulate the internet numbers. So the ENAM service, which the ITU is running, is still regulated by the government. And because we've been talking a lot about, I mean, not a lot, but there was some mentioning about the WICIT, the World Conference on International Telecommunications taking place in 2 weeks in Dubai. I think the ENAM, the service which the ITU is running, is a very good example of what happens when the ITU is managing something in the field of the internet. Is there someone here who is using ENAM? Yeah, I thought so. So in any place where I've been speaking and I've been asking the same questions, there is almost none. I think there were a couple of people in the Netherlands who use it, and I don't know why. I mean, they couldn't explain it, some historical issue. So the fact that there is such a service. Actually, it's not a bad service. It connects an IP address like a phone number, so you kind of carry it with you wherever you go. And there is a guy from the Dutch Internet Society who is, oh, I see they're still translating. There is a guy from the Dutch Internet Society who is, you can call him if you have a SIP phone, you can make a phone call to his email address and it will ring at his phone. So it is very convenient service, except it's managed by the ITU, who otherwise are doing a great job. But so since the government decided that they're not going to take care of the internet service providers and the internet as a whole, we've seen some really great numbers in Bulgaria. So there are 7 million people in the country, and there are more than 2,000 internet service providers. Just as a comparison, there are 7 million people living in New York City, and there are 3 internet service providers. The speeds at which people connect in Bulgaria in the major cities are among the fastest speeds in the European Union. Actually, the Commissioner Nelly Kroes was in September in Sofia, and she came giving an interview saying that Bulgaria is very poor in terms of broadband penetration and internet usage. And that was on, let's say, Thursday. And on Monday she gave another interview saying that while the internet is only used by 60% of the people, she understood and she acknowledges the fact that it was published by her commission, by the way, the European Commission, that about 80% of the users are connected, of these 60%, are connected at speeds higher than 10 megabits per second. Now the 10 megabit is a fake number because the European Commission thought that this is a fast speed. In Bulgaria it's usually about 100 megabit. And the ones that are lucky are connected at 1 gigabit. And they pay the same. And the digital divide is between the people who are lucky and live somewhere near where the fiber optic goes, and the people who are not so lucky. But the question of dealing with the internet governance in the country at least, and the legal framework is that we saw, and then the Ministry of Communications 2 years ago published an official information document. It's on the ITU website at the Plenipotentiary Conference website, that there is no relation, the only relation they figured out is that if you have less regulation, then people just, entrepreneurs, you know, they start businesses and they develop their own network. And I've been introduced, you know, our internet service provider, which we founded in '93, we sold it in 2008 successfully to some foreign investors. And we even don't know how many thousands of miles of fiber optic and UTP cables we've put around the capital. But it was a lot. So when we started talking on internet governance and internet-related issues at the ITU, we saw that there were many governmental officials from different countries who didn't know what's the relation between the legal framework and the penetration, the internet usage. There were actually some people, and one of them is the late Nabil Kisrawi, the ambassador of Syria to the ITU, or the representative, rather, not the ambassador, who was saying that those countries which have more IP addresses have cheaper internet. So he put relation between the number of IP addresses allocated to a country to the price of the internet services. And we had huge argument, I remember, with him, because he was saying that he speaks as a representative of a developing country. And me and my colleague Petko Kunchev, we approached him and we said, well, out of curiosity, what's the average salary in Syria? And he said something like $1,000. Now this is before the war started, or the civil war. $1,000 a month. And we said, well, you know, Bulgaria is the developing countries because the average salary is like $400 a month. At which point another diplomat came and said, overheard the conversation and said, no, that means Bulgaria is a poor country, not a developing country. But at the end of the day, what we figured out was that governmental officials who go to those meetings, big international meetings, they're not necessarily aware of how the internet, how the legislature influences the internet on one hand, and on the other, how what's the relation between the addresses, names, and internet penetration. They thought that there is some. They thought that if you have more domain names, then your internet is better. They didn't realize, for example, many of them still don't realize that ICANN doesn't deal with spam, or that the security of the network is not provided by the companies that are the internet service providers. It may be provided by the end user, or it may be provided by the ISP only as part of a service, but it's not a request. So what we have been trying to focus in Bulgaria and then in some of the other countries that we've been working with is basically explaining and educating. And I'm using the opportunity that there are so many people from different countries here to ask you to, when you talk to your governments, just accept that they are not really experts in the field. And later you will be hearing from Leonid Todorov from the Russian Federation, his experience with the Russian Ministry of Communications, understanding of internet governance. And some of you may have heard that Russia submitted yesterday a proposal to the WCAT on internet. And the proposal was circulated yesterday by some folks in English using Google Translate. And then I asked for the original and they sent it. And I looked through the original and I sent back a comment saying, you know what, Google Translate is a machine translation which is trying to be smart. So it's smarter, it's better translated than the original is. But I'm not going to go into details on that because otherwise I'll take off Leonid's talking points. But I'm saying it because many of the people I know from the community, the broader internet community, they think that their governments are corrupt and there is some anti-Western or whatever, pro-Western or you name it, alliances. In many cases, of course, in some cases it has to do with foreign policies. But in many cases it has to do only with the fact that they need to know, but they don't know where to read or who to ask. People like Wolfgang and others who are here, who are coming from the academic world, they clearly have a better path of talking to governments worldwide because they will be accepted as independent or not biased. Like when I go and talk to a government, they always have the suspicion also, are you talking as yourself or are you talking as the ICANN representative? I have had situations where people would claim that I represent ICANN and I have to go and explain that I don't represent ICANN in, say, Switzerland because that's Nigel Hickson's region. I represent ICANN in Eastern Europe and Russia and the CIS. So the appeal is really to talk and to publish and to collect like articles and papers, but keep in mind that no governmental official has time. Usually the people who deal with internet governance are people who deal with like many more important things. So they won't have the time to read a 187 pages book. And you have the option of either providing something short, like oral, or point them to Amadeo who can give them the best possible explanation of what the internet is. By telling them, you don't need to know, just trust me, let me speak instead of you, right, Amadeo? So, how we did that change in Bulgaria, I think we had a unique coincidence of events. First of all, we had a country which was willing to join the European Union, but still didn't have a timeline. So the government was trying very much to be in accordance with all the European directives and laws. Secondly, we had a political leader who understood that fighting with a non-profit civil society organization is always, they're going to lose no matter what. Even if they have won the case, they would have lost the battle, the war. They would have won the battle, but they would have lost the war. When he reached out to us and suggested an out-of-court agreement, he actually managed to get, so to speak, us on his side. So 2 years later, actually, the then still Prime Minister joined the Internet Society. And we had, in 2001, I believe, we had like the current and the future president, the current and the future Prime Minister, members of the parliament, they all joined the Internet Society. Of course, they joined it also because it was free by then. If they had to pay the $25 or $35 a year, they would never join, because politicians never pay, they only get money. So that also helped us, because when the next government came into office, we had some leverage. We had people who go out and talk. Last time I saw Bulgaria used its weight to get into politics was in 2009 at the European Parliament elections. We supported 2 members of the Parliament, or 2 candidates rather. And then we got a letter, an open letter from the same Prime Minister who was the Prime Minister in '99, who said, "How dare you support those 2 guys who are members of the other party?" Without asking us, the members. And we looked at his letter, we laughed a little bit with other members of the board, and then we wrote a response saying, you know what, in 2001, when Veni went and publicly spoke in favor of your party at your political rallies, these guys never came to protest or to send open letters, so who is more democratic? And at this point our communication ended with the former Prime Minister. But the people who we supported at the European Parliament turned out to be really good. We believe that they will be good because they promised that they will not take any positions which are endangering the internet. So one of them became the rapporteur for the cybersecurity in the Parliament. And he's the former Foreign Minister of Bulgaria, Ivailo Kalfin. And he's been at some of the ICANN meetings in Prague, I think, a couple of years ago, or 2 years ago. He became also a very active voice this year in January when there was a debate about the ACTA. And eventually it was turned down, so I would say part of the efforts that we got from European politicians were due to the fact that we were talking to them. So I think the lesson that we have from all these years is that if we approach the politicians in a positive way, well, first you beat them so that they will respect you, but after that, if you approach them in a positive way and say, look, we understand you are very busy, but here is our advice on the key issues that will define the development of the internet in the country, they would listen. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting that this experience can be used in other countries which are not, which have different cultures, let's put it this way. Probably it's not going to work. But I'm sure that in every country, wherever it is, there is a way to be engaged in a dialogue with the government and try to persuade them. And what we did in '99, when we did it, actually nobody believed that we're going to win. When I was trying to find a lawyer to represent us in the Supreme Court, nobody wanted to be our lawyer, including people from organizations like the Bulgarian Helsinki Committee, which is a human rights organization. They just said, nah, you're going to lose. There is no point. By the last hearing at the court, we had like a waiting line in front of our office with lawyers who wanted to represent us. So, and we actually chose one who was not in this line, but was a nice guy, just because we felt it's better to have somebody who is a professional lawyer, not like me, because I'm educated. I graduated law, but I never practiced. And later, when we've been talking about this with my colleagues who were then in this whole case, we thought, if we haven't tried, we would have never figured out if we are able to win or not. And that's the moral of the whole story. Like, if you can try, or if you can urge people to try, without, of course, risking their lives. I mean, I'm far away from the thought that, you know, somebody should sacrifice their own life for the sake of keeping the internet free. That can be done only if you're young and unexperienced like I was back then. And we did not risk even our lives, we risked our business, because we were at the same time running an internet service provider. And I have to tell you, we had days when every day there will be another governmental organization or body coming to visit us. You know, we would have visits from the police, from the fire department, from the healthcare department, from the social services, to check whether everything is in order, to ask how do we feel, do we want something, do we want, for example, to get rid of our servers so that, you know, they can check whether there is illegal software on them. Basically, it was a mild pressure, but we never stepped back, and that helped us at the end. It wasn't the case, by the way, with other ISPs. Some other ISPs, while we were fighting for, like everyone, they were actually going to the state and were applying for licenses and wanted to get them. So it wasn't an easy case, but I'm giving it again. I'm giving it and coming back to the end of this short presentation. I'm coming back to the point where if we were able to change the legal framework to make it internet friendly, this is partly due to the fact that we had a partner to talk to, even though we had to find them first. And secondly, once we became kind of known, or I would say probably notorious, we were able to influence the policies of government after government after government. Now, full disclosure, it didn't work in all the laws. A few years ago, when we were fighting against the wiretapping of the internet communications in Bulgaria, we didn't succeed. They just accepted the changes in the law, and they changed the way they can acquire traffic data from the internet service providers by expanding it beyond what they used to have. But we figured out that if the society was not supportive, because we thought, you know, we're not going to fight the same fight alone. And we just didn't push too much. We just waited to see if somebody else would take the lead, and it didn't happen. But it's still, the internet is still unregulated as it was. Anyway, so if you have any questions.